The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was reviewing contracts in my office when my secretary buzzed through. "Ms. Sarah Mitchell, there's an urgent call on line 1. The woman says she's your mother." My fingers froze over the keyboard. Mother, a word I hadn't associated with anyone for 15 years. Not since that rainy night when I was 17, standing in our driveway with a single backpack while my father's voice echoed behind me. "You're no daughter of mine. Should I take a message?" My secretary asked after my prolonged silence. "No," I said, surprising myself. "Put her through." The line clicked, and suddenly, I was transported back in time by a voice I tried so hard to forget. "Sarah? Sarah, is that you?" Margaret Mitchell's voice hadn't changed, still that same blend of authority and artificial sweetness that had colored my childhood. But now, there was something else. Desperation. "What do you want?" My voice came out harder than I'd intended, professional calm carved into ice by old wounds. "It's your father." She paused, and I heard her take a shaky breath. "He's dying, Sarah. He needs a kidney transplant, and you're the only match." The world tilted slightly on its axis. Thomas Mitchell, the man who'd thrown me out for daring to question his authority, who'd called me worthless for wanting to study law instead of joining his real estate empire, was dying, and he needed my kidney. "How did you even know I'd be a match?" I asked, suspicion creeping in. "We had you tested when you were young, remember? For that genetic screening program. Please, Sarah. He has days, maybe weeks." I did remember. Age 12. A doctor's office, being told it was routine. Nothing about it had felt routine. "Where is he?" "Boston General. Please come." "He's in room 447. Her voice cracked. "We need you." Need. Not love. Not miss. Not sorry. Need. I ended the call without responding and sat back in my chair, staring at the Boston skyline through my corner office window. Partner at 32 at one of the city's top law firms. I'd built this life from nothing, starting the night they threw me out. "Cancel my appointments for the day," I told my secretary. "Something's come up." Boston General was a 20-minute drive from my office. I spent it remembering the last time I'd seen my parents. I'd just been accepted to Harvard Law on a full scholarship. Instead of pride, my father had raged about betrayal, about family loyalty, about his plans for me to take over Mitchell Properties. When I stood my ground, he gave me a choice, his way or the highway. I chose the highway. Best decision I ever made. The hospital lobby was cool and antiseptic. At the information desk, I stated my father's name and room number, watching as the receptionist typed it into her computer. "Are you family?" she asked. "Apparently so," I muttered, taking the visitor's badge she handed me. The elevator ride to the 4th floor gave me time to steel myself. 15 years is a long time. I'd changed, grown stronger. They couldn't hurt me anymore. Room 447 was at the end of a long corridor. Through the half-open door, I could see my mother's silver hair. She was sitting beside a hospital bed, holding the hand of a man I barely recognized. Thomas Mitchell had always been larger than life. Tall, broad-shouldered, commanding. The figure in the bed seemed diminished, gray-faced, tubes snaking from his arms. But when his eyes met mine, I saw the same steel that had ruled our household with an iron fist. "Sarah." My mother stood, smoothing her expensive skirt with trembling hands. "You came." I stayed in the doorway, maintaining my distance. "You said it was urgent." "It is." A new voice joined the conversation. I turned to find a doctor entering the room, chart in hand. Mr. Mitchell's kidneys are failing rapidly. Without a transplant soon, he let the sentence hang. And I'm supposedly the only match? I asked. The doctor frowned slightly. According to the records your parents provided, yes. We need to run current tests to confirm, of course. Something in his tone caught my attention. A hint of doubt. Could we have a moment alone, doctor? I asked. Family matters to discuss. He nodded and stepped out, but not before giving me a look that sent warning bells ringing through my legal training. Something wasn't right here. I turned back to my parents. My mother had resumed her seat, clutching my father's hand like a lifeline. He hadn't spoken yet, just watched me with those calculating eyes I remembered so well. 15 years, I said quietly. No calls, no letters, no attempts to reconcile. And now, you need my kidney. You're the one who abandoned your family. My father finally spoke, voice rough. We gave you everything. Everything except the right to choose my own path. I stepped closer to the bed. Why now? Really? He's dying, my mother repeated, but it sounded mechanical now. Rehearsed. You're our only hope. I'm a lawyer now, I said, watching their reactions carefully. Senior partner, actually. Specialized in medical malpractice and insurance fraud. It's amazing what you learn about hospital procedures, medical records, insurance policies. My father's heart monitor beat slightly faster. I'd like to see your medical records, I said. All of them, and the insurance paperwork. That's private, my mother snapped too quickly. Not if you want my kidney. We stared at each other, years of unspoken words hanging between us. Finally, my father spoke. Margaret, give us a moment. My mother looked ready to protest, but something in his expression stopped her. She stood, straightening her designer jacket, and walked out without looking at me. You always were too smart for your own good, my father said once we were alone, just like your grandmother. The mention of Gran hit me hard. She'd been the only one who supported my dreams, who slipped me money for books and applications. She died while I was in law school. They hadn't even told me about the funeral. What's really going on here? I asked. He smiled, but it wasn't warm. You really want to know? Check with Dr. Harrison. Tell him you're my daughter, and you're considering donation. See what he says. It was a challenge, wrapped in a clue, delivered with the same manipulative edge I remember from childhood. But I wasn't a child anymore. I found Dr. Harrison at the nurse's station reviewing charts. When I approached and introduced myself, his expression changed from professional courtesy to concern. Ms. Mitchell, could we speak privately? He led me to a small consultation room and closed the door. What I'm about to tell you. There are ethical considerations. Doctor-patient confidentiality. I nodded. But as a potential donor, I have rights to certain information. And as a lawyer, I know exactly what those rights are. He studied me for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. Your parents brought this insurance claim to my attention 2 months ago. They wanted me to sign off on it. I refused. I unfolded the paper, and my blood ran cold. It was an insurance claim for a substantial policy, paid out upon the death of Sarah Mitchell, age 32, from complications during organ donation surgery. They took out a policy on my life. I whispered. When? 6 months ago. Dr. Harrison's voice was gentle. The kidney failure is real, but your father has other options. Dialysis, other potential donors. They specifically insisted on you. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. They hadn't contacted me out of desperation or love. They'd contacted me because they'd found one last way to profit from the daughter they'd thrown away. I carefully refolded the insurance claim. "Thank you, doctor. I'll need copies of everything. Medical records, test results, all communication with my parents. Of course." He hesitated. "Ms. Mitchell, be careful. People capable of planning something like this." "I know exactly what they're capable of," I said, standing. I learned that lesson 15 years ago. Walking back to my father's room, I felt oddly calm. The hurt child inside me had finally gone quiet, replaced by something harder, clearer. I found my mother back in her chair, my father apparently sleeping. "I've made my decision," I announced from the doorway. My mother's head snapped up. "You'll do it?" "No." I held up the insurance claim. "But I will be filing a report with the insurance commission and the police. Attempted insurance fraud and conspiracy carry heavy penalties these days." The color drained from her face. "Sarah, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I stepped into the room, my heels clicking on the linoleum. "You threw me out because I wouldn't be controlled, because I chose my own path. Now you think you found a way to finally make my life worth something to you. 6 figures, to be exact. You ungrateful." My father's eyes had opened, fury replacing the artificial weakness. "After everything we did for you, you did nothing for me." I cut him off. "Everything I am, I built myself. And now, I'm going to make sure you never try to profit from my death, or anyone else's." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. I'm not just a lawyer. I'm executor of Grand's estate. Have been since she died, including the trust fund she left me, the one you tried to hide. I've been managing it quite successfully. It's worth quite a bit more than your insurance scheme with paid." The machines beeped faster as my father tried to sit up. "That money was supposed to." "Goodbye," I said, and walked out of their lives for the second time. In the parking lot, I called my office. "Cancel my appointments for the rest of the week," I told my secretary. "And get me everything we have on insurance fraud prosecution. I have a new case." The sun was setting over Boston as I drove home, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. 15 years ago, I'd left their house with nothing but a backpack and dreams. Now I was leaving them again, but this time with something more valuable than a kidney or trust fund. I was leaving with the knowledge that I'd not only survived their rejection, I'd thrived despite it. And this time, I was strong enough to reject them. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Please don't do this. We're family." I deleted it without responding. Family isn't about blood or organs or insurance policies. It's about love, support, and respect, none of which they'd ever given me. I was done being their backup plan. It was time to write my own story, one where I wasn't a victim or a resource, but the author of my own destiny. The setting sun caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, and I smiled. I looked exactly like my grandmother. The next morning, I walked into my law office with purpose. The sleepless night had been spent reviewing everything I knew about insurance fraud and familial medical deception. My secretary, Lisa, looked up as I passed her desk. "Ms. Mitchell, there are 17 messages from a Margaret Mitchell, and the hospital's legal department called. Forward the hospital calls to me. Block my parents' numbers." I paused at my office door. "And Lisa, if anyone claiming to be family tries to come up, don't let them in." My office was my sanctuary, wall-to-wall law books, a view of the harbor, and the degrees I'd earned hanging proudly on the wall. I sat at my desk and began making calls. First, to the insurance commission. "This is Sarah Mitchell. I need to report an attempted fraud involving Boston General Hospital and a life insurance policy." Then, to my investigator. "James, I need everything on Mitchell properties for the last 15 years. Financial records, property dealings, insurance policies. Especially anything involving medical claims or deaths." By noon, the pieces were starting to form a disturbing pattern. Mitchell Properties had taken out similar policies on 3 other people in the past decade, all supposedly close family friends who died under mysterious medical circumstances. The payouts had helped keep the company afloat during the real estate crash. My father hadn't just targeted me. He turned insurance fraud into a business strategy. A knock at my door interrupted my research. "Come in." Dr. Harrison entered, carrying a thick manila envelope. "Ms. Mitchell, I brought everything you requested. And there's more." He laid out a series of documents on my desk: insurance claims, medical records, and, most damning of all, emails between my parents and various medical professionals, seeking someone willing to cooperate with their plan. "They approached 3 other doctors before me," he explained. "All refused. That's when they started pressuring me about signing off on their insurance claim." I picked up one of the emails. "This is exactly what we need. Would you be willing to testify if it comes to that?" He nodded firmly. "What they're doing, it's not just illegal. It's a perversion of everything medicine stands for." As he left, my phone buzzed with a text from James. "Found something big. Meeting in person only." We met at a small cafe 2 blocks from my office. James, a former detective turned private investigator, looked more serious than usual. "Your grandmother's death," he said without preamble. "Have you ever seen the actual death certificate?" My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "No. They told me it was a heart attack. Natural causes." He slid a document across the table. "Look at the attending physician's name." The same doctor who had refused to cooperate with my parents' current scheme had signed my grandmother's death certificate. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. Cause of death: complications from kidney failure. "There's more," James said quietly. "Your grandmother had a life insurance policy too, paid out to your parents. And guess who needed a kidney transplant back then?" The pieces clicked into a horrible place. My father. The timeline matches his first transplant surgery, and your grandmother was a match. My hands were shaking as I set down the death certificate. They killed her? Because she helped me? Because she left me the trust fund? James reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "We can't prove it. Yet. But with what we now know about their current scheme, we can investigate her death as part of the pattern." I finished, lawyer mode engaging despite my emotional turmoil. "Open everything up. It's risky," he warned. "People who would kill their own mother might come after their daughter." I smiled grimly. "Let them try. I'm not that scared 17-year-old anymore." Back in my office, I began preparing the legal documents: complaint forms for the insurance commission, police reports, a civil suit against Mitchell Properties, and a petition to exhume my grandmother's body for forensic examination. My phone kept buzzing with messages from unknown numbers, my parents trying different phones to reach me. I blocked each one without reading them. Then came the email from my father's account. "Sarah, you're making a mistake. Everything we did was for the family. Your grandmother understood that in the end. Don't make us take measures we'd rather avoid." There's still time to be reasonable. Come to the hospital tomorrow. Sign the donor papers. We'll tear up the insurance policy, and this unpleasantness can be forgotten. Dad. I forwarded the email to James with one word: Evans. That night, as I was leaving the office, Lisa caught me at the elevator. Ms. Mitchell, there's someone here to see you. Says she's your sister. I froze. I don't have a sister. She says her name is Emma Mitchell. That she's your father's daughter from after you left. A half-sister. Someone they'd replaced me with. Probably raised to be everything I wasn't. Compliant, obedient, willing to sacrifice herself for the family business. Send her up. The girl who walked into my office looked about 18. The same age I was when they threw me out. She had our father's eyes, but none of his hardness. They told me you abandoned us, she said without preamble. That you were selfish, unstable. But that's not true, is it? I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Why don't you tell me what you think is true? I found some old papers in Dad's study about Grandma's death. About other people, too. She swallowed hard. And yesterday, I overheard them talking about you and some insurance policy. They said it would solve everything, just like before. My heart ached for this girl, another pawn in their games. What do you want from me? Help, she said simply. I don't want to be part of their schemes anymore. And, she hesitated, I think I want to go to college. Law school maybe, like you did. I studied her face, looking for any sign of manipulation or deception. I saw only fear, hope, and determination, the same emotions I'd felt at her age. Okay, I said finally. But first, I need you to tell me everything you know. About Grandma, about their business practices, about their plans for me. Everything. She nodded, pulled out a USB drive, and placed it on my desk. I already copied all the files I could find. I want them stopped. As she talked, I realized two things. First, she was giving us exactly the evidence we needed to bring my parents to justice. And second, I might have lost my parents 15 years ago, but I just found something better. A sister who shared not just my blood, but my values. It's going to get ugly, I warned her. They won't go down without a fight. She straightened in her chair, looking suddenly older. I know, but I'd rather fight on the right side. I thought of my grandmother, who'd fought for me in her own way, and paid the ultimate price. I thought of Dr. Harrison, standing up for medical ethics despite pressure. And I thought of myself at 17, choosing integrity over family loyalty. Welcome to the right side, I said, reaching for my phone. Now let's make sure they can't hurt anyone else. The sun had set over Boston, but for the first time since my mother's call, I felt light breaking through the darkness. Sometimes, family isn't what you're born into. It's what you choose to build from the ashes of what burns down. And I was done letting my parents play with fire. The next morning dawned with a sense of impending confrontation. Emma had spent the night at my apartment. I wasn't about to send her back to our parents after what she'd revealed. Over breakfast, we reviewed the contents of her USB drive. Look at this, she said, pointing to a spreadsheet. Every person they took insurance policies out on. Dates, amounts, doctors involved. Her finger traced it down to one name that made my heart stop. Elizabeth Mitchell, Grandma. The policy was worth $2 million. I studied the document, my lawyer's mind cataloging the details. They've been running this scheme for nearly 20 years, each victim carefully chosen, someone they could claim a close connection to, someone whose medical care they could influence. There's more, Emma said, pulling up another file. Recent emails about you. They've been planning this for months. Look at the date. They first contacted the insurance company. It was the exact day I'd made partner at my firm, complete with the newspaper announcement about my promotion and new salary. They'd been watching me all along, waiting for the perfect moment. My phone buzzed. James. Turn on the news, he said without preamble. Channel 7. The headline made my coffee go cold. Prominent real estate developer Thomas Mitsubishi Ruhishidi to ICU. Condaton Hriticl. They're playing their endgame, I realized. Making it public, adding pressure. If I don't help now, I'm the heartless daughter who let her father die. Emma's face hardened. We need to move faster. I was already dialing Dr. Harrison. How bad is it really? He's stable, the doctor replied. The emergency is theatrical. But they're using it to push for immediate action. They've requested a transfer to another hospital, one where they have a more cooperative doctor. Don't let that transfer happen, I ordered. I'm bringing everything to the DA today. But my parents had planned well. By noon, every local news station was running the story. Old photos of our happy family before I left. Business associates praising my father's character. Even a tearful interview with my mother, begging me to come home before it's too late. The pressure built throughout the day. Calls from distant relatives. Emails from my father's business partners. Even my own colleagues gave me concerned looks in the hallways. Ms. Mitchell. Lisa appeared at my door. There's a woman from the Boston Globe here. She wants your side of the story. I was about to refuse when Emma spoke up from where she'd been reviewing documents. Do it. Tell the truth. All of it. She was right. It was time to change the narrative. The reporter, Susan Martinez, sat across from my desk with her recorder ready. Your father's condition is part of a pattern of insurance fraud and medical manipulation that's gone on for decades. I cut in, laying out the evidence we gathered, starting with the death of my grandmother. For the next hour, I detailed everything: the insurance schemes, the suspicious deaths, the attempt to use me for one final payout. Emma added her own testimony, providing the insider perspective that made the story impossible to ignore. This is explosive, Susan said finally. You understand what publishing this will do to your family. They stopped being my family the night they threw me out for wanting to be a lawyer, I replied. Now they're just criminals I'm obligated to stop. As Susan left, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello, Sarah. The voice was unfamiliar. Elegant. Dangerous. My name is Howard Sterling. I represent your parents' interests. Then you should know I don't speak to opposing counsel without my own lawyer present. He chuckled. I'm not calling as a lawyer. I'm calling as someone who understands family dynamics. Your parents are willing to make a deal. I'm not interested in deals. $5 million, he said smoothly. Cash, plus a public statement absolving you of any blame in your father's condition. All you have to do is destroy the evidence and walk away. I looked at Emma, who had gone pale listening to my side of the conversation. I thought of my grandmother, of all the other victims. You can tell my parents they taught me one valuable lesson. Some things are worth more than money. Don't be foolish. Sterling's voice hardened. This evidence you've gathered. Accidents happen. Files get corrupted. Witnesses change their minds. Consider carefully what you're risking. Are you threatening me, Mr. Sterling? I'm advising you, as someone who's seen how these situations typically end. I smiled, though he couldn't see it. Then let me advise you, as someone who spent 15 years building a reputation for never backing down, you have no idea what I'm capable of. I hung up and immediately called James. We need security. For me, for Emma, for Dr. Harrison, and get everything we have backed up and distributed to secure locations. Already done, he replied. And Sarah? There's a detective here from Homicide. He's very interested in reopening your grandmother's case. The pieces were falling into place, but I knew my parents wouldn't go down without one final confrontation. It came that evening. I was working late, reviewing depositions, when my office door opened. My mother stood there, elegant as ever in her designer suit, but her eyes were wild. You ungrateful child, she hissed. After everything we've done. Like killing Grandma, I stood slowly, like trying to kill me. We gave you every opportunity. To be your puppet? Your victim? Sorry, I chose a different path. She stepped closer, and I saw something in her hand glint under the office lights. A syringe. It didn't have to be this way, she said softly. We could have done this humanely, in the hospital. Now, she lifted the syringe. Sometimes mothers have to make hard choices. Like the choice to kill your own daughter? Emma's voice came from behind her. My mother spun to find Emma in the doorway. Phone held up, recording everything. Emma? The shock in my mother's voice was almost comical. What are you? Choosing a side, Emma said firmly. The right one. The elevator dinged, and heavy footsteps approached. James appeared with 2 police officers, their weapons drawn. Margaret Mitchell, one officer announced, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and the suspected murder of Elizabeth Mitchell. As they led our mother away in handcuffs, Emma came to stand beside me. Dad? Already in custody, James confirmed. The police picked him up at the hospital an hour ago. Dr. Harrison's testimony was very convincing. I watched through my office window as they put our mother in a police car, the same parking lot where, just days ago, I'd stood wondering if I could ever face my parents again. What happens now? Emma asked quietly. I put my arm around my sister's shoulders. Now we make sure justice is served. For Grandma, for all their victims. And then we build something better. Together. The city lights sparkled beyond the window, full of promise and possibility. Sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the best outcomes. And sometimes standing up for what's right means standing against those who raised you to do wrong. 1 year later, I stood in the courtroom as the judge delivered the verdict. My parents, once pillars of Boston society, sat defeated as the sentences were read. 25 years for my father, 20 for my mother. Multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and after the exhumation of my grandmother's body revealed traces of a deliberately administered overdose, first-degree murder. The evidence Emma provided had been crucial. Her testimony, combined with Dr. Harrison's medical expertise and the mountain of documentation we'd uncovered, made the case airtight. The investigation revealed 5 other suspicious deaths linked to their insurance schemes, each one adding years to their sentences. As the bailiff led them away, my mother turned to look at me one last time. The hatred in her eyes had dimmed, replaced by something that might have been regret. My father didn't look back at all. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered with their microphones and cameras. Emma, now in her first year at Harvard Law, stood beside me as I made a brief statement. Justice isn't always comfortable, I told the cameras. Sometimes it requires us to confront ugly truths about those we once trusted. But the truth, however painful, is always better than living with lies. Later that evening, Emma and I visited our grandmother's grave. Her headstone had been replaced with a new one, bearing the truth of her life and death. Elizabeth Mitchell, beloved grandmother, who died protecting those she loved. I wish I had known her, Emma said, placing flowers by the stone. She would have loved you, I replied. She believed in following your heart, even when it meant standing against family. We turned our parents' empire to better purposes. Mitchell Properties had been dissolved, its assets used to create a foundation supporting medical ethics and helping victims of financial fraud. The old family mansion had been converted into a shelter for young people kicked out of their homes, kids like I had been, needing a fresh start. My law practice had shifted too. While I still handled corporate cases, I developed a specialty in representing whistleblowers and victims of financial abuse within families. Emma worked as my intern between classes, learning the right way to practice law. Sarah? Emma's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Do you ever regret it? Exposing everything. I considered the question carefully. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that our parents chose greed and control over love and integrity. But standing up for what's right? Never. The sun was setting over Boston as we left the cemetery, painting the sky in shades of hope. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Harrison. The Medical Ethics Board had approved our proposal for new guidelines on family organ donation, ensuring no one else could be pressured into unwanted procedures. You know what Grandma used to say? I told Emma as we walked to our cars. Family isn't about sharing blood. It's about sharing values. Emma smiled. Then I'm glad we're family. Me too, sis. Me too. We'd lost the family we were born into, but we'd built something better. A legacy of truth, justice, and genuine care for others. Our parents had tried to use family ties as chains. We transformed them into bridges, connecting us to a larger purpose. As I drove home that evening, I passed the lake house where it all began, when my mother's call shattered my carefully built peace. It was on the market now, the proceeds earmarked for the foundation, another piece of the past transformed into future good. My grandmother's trust fund, the one they tried to hide from me, had grown substantially under my management. Following her example, I designated it for scholarships, helping other young people escape toxic families and build their own paths. The story made national news, sparked investigations into similar schemes, and led to changes in insurance and medical consent laws. But the biggest change was more personal. I'd learned that standing up against family doesn't mean standing alone. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is tell the truth, even when that truth costs us everything we thought was family. And sometimes, in losing what we thought was family, we find what family really means. Emma and I had dinner that night at my apartment, raising a toast to our grandmother and to the future we were building, not as victims or pawns in someone else's game, but as architects of our own destiny. To choosing right over easy, Emma said, lifting her glass. To real family, I added. Outside, Boston sparkled with possibility, and for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. We'd faced the darkness in our family legacy and transformed it into light. Sometimes the happy ending isn't about forgiving those who hurt you. Sometimes it's about building something better from the ashes they left behind. And that's exactly what we did.